Joanne Dugan is a professional photographer and author who grew up in a Montessori household. Her two New York City-themed projects encourage children to find alphabets and numbers in the world right in front of them, and to see what is part of their daily lives in a new way.
Joanne, tell me a little bit about how you decided to become an author.
The ABC NYC book came as a personal project for my son Hugo. When he was learning to read, I was wandering around the streets of New York with him. And one day we looked up and realized that the letters of the alphabet were everywhere we looked. And that is what really started my career as a children's book author. I did the ABC book for him personally. And it wasn't until after 9/11, when I wanted to do something as an homage to the children of New York, that I decided to publish the book.
When you were putting the book together, were you aware of Montessori's philosophy about how books should be written for children?
Definitely. And I always had a theory that I believe also mirrors the Montessori philosophy, which is that children are much more sophisticated, both visually and otherwise, than many of the materials around them give them credit for. And that was a base. I saw that in working with my own son, in teaching him the letters of the alphabet and learning how he could be inspired by looking at his own world in a new way. And I believe the Montessori philosophy does that quite beautifully as well.
What about for children that don't live in New York? How does the book impact them?
Well, the interesting thing is the book is about New York, obviously, but it also has a much bigger theme, which is about this idea of taking what's in your daily life and seeing it in a new way and using it as a way to inspire yourself to look more closely at what's right in front of you. Now, of course, my book is about New York, but the interesting thing is it's more about my son's and my family's daily life. And we happen to live right in the middle of the largest city, in the country. And we happen to walk out the door and see both the Chrysler Building and the Empire State Building every single day because it's right in our neighborhood. But my thoughts in putting the book together were that I went ahead and did that in New York, but people can do that wherever they live and sort of celebrate the things of their daily life by how they look at them. So many things for children are done as illustrations, which I think is a wonderful thing. But for me, using photography was a way of bringing in real life to a situation as opposed to my interpretation or my illustrator's interpretation of real life. In doing this book, I looked at the world through a child's eyes. One of the most important things I think is structure, this idea of giving kids structure. And I've seen time and time again within my own work with the children's books that kids love a simple structure that's very easy for them to follow. And within this book, we very much followed that philosophy. My attitude it was to reduce things down to their simplest elements so that children at various ages could understand the book. I think Montessori does that as well so beautifully, which is, this idea of multiple layers of experience within a certain activity that's done in the classroom. So in my case with the book, it was of interest to very, very young children simply because of the bright, simple graphic element of the book. And then a very beginning reader would start to discern the letters of the alphabet within the book. And then a more sophisticated reader would be able to read, the text that's included in the book.
So you went on to write another book. Was that also for your son?
Yes, although he had gotten older by this point, but he still was definitely an inspiration in my process. And that was a book about numbers, which is called 123 NYC, a counting book of New York City. So that brought in another way to look at things. and particularly this idea of things in collections. And I think that really relates to Montessori philosophy as well, that often a large group of things that can be sorted and looked at both individually and as part of a larger group is a wonderful learning tool as well. And I also, on purpose, included words that were not considered necessarily part of a 5-year-old's vocabulary by a lot of people. And I found that children absolutely love to take these very sort of big words and roll them across their tongue. Like I've done lots of book readings where children will love to say the word skyscraper, and they stretch out the word as they say it, and they repeat it back and forth. And so I on purpose put words in there that some children might not know right away, but they learn by seeing it, doing it, speaking it, and the experiential aspect of working with that word is ultimately what teaches them. And I believe, again, that happens so naturally and intuitively in a Montessori classroom.
I love the example of skyscraper.
Another word that I loved putting in there was the word obelisk, which is not, and even some parents were like, what is that again? And so the parents would learn as well. And rather than look at it as, oh no, we can't put that in there because the child hasn't heard the word, my attitude was, let's put that in there because the child may not know the word, and let's make it fun for them to learn this word rather than get intimidated because they see a word that they don't know. To look at it as a challenge and a fun activity to sort of figure out what the word is, what it sounds like, and also within the context of the book, what it looks like. I wanted there to be this palpable physical response when a kid looked at a letter that might be rendered in a way that they hadn't quite seen that way before. I've done numerous exercises with kids where we actually will put together their own alphabet. It could end up being a book. It could be a simpler project than that. Sometimes it's a photo project that kids are able to do within the classroom. That's exactly what Hugo and I did when we were working on this book. We personalize our own world, but it absolutely could be done anywhere. And I have seen beautiful, beautiful examples. So I really encourage teachers to think about that with their students. And it gives children a chance to talk about their own world and then to note it and mark it and use it within a project. And it's something that everyone really gets a lot out of doing. And I've had so many parents write to me and say, the first thing that my daughter did when she came to New York is looked up into the buildings and she saw all the water towers. And water towers are something on the New York skyline that are very unique to New York, the sheer number of them. And they're within both the counting book and the alphabet book, also manhole covers. And kids have such a great time because they're literally on every single street in New York. There are more than 500,000 of them in New York. And so what happens is the kid gets a reference point when they arrive in the city, and suddenly it becomes sort of their personal journey through the city because what do people do when they walk on the streets? They look up and they look down. And when they look down, they see these manhole covers. And parents have told me again and again and again that kids feel like it's their own personal experience of the city just by noting this simple thing that most New Yorkers on a daily basis are so used to seeing that they don't notice them anymore. Anything that allows a child to see the alphabet in a new way is something that I'm interested in.
Joanne's newest endeavor, The Alphabet City, draws on her large photographic archive of urban alphabets, originally made for the book projects. They can be purchased for a display in a home or a classroom. She is also at work on several new books. For more information on her work, go to www.joannedugan.com or www.thealphabetcity.com.